This week we have two readings from Scripture. I'd love you to hear these words to compare and contrast the spectrum of the human experience. Our first reading is Philippians 3, verses 3 through 6. For it is we who are the circumcision, who worship in the Spirit of God and boast in Christ Jesus and have no confidence in the flesh, even though I too have reason for confidence in the flesh. If anyone else has reason to be confident in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day, a member of the people of Israel, a tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew born of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. Our second reading is Romans 7, verses 14 through 24. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of the flesh, sold into slavery under sin. I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree that the law is good, but in fact it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that the good does dwell in me, that is, in my flesh, for the desire to do good lies close at hand, but not the ability. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do is not what I want to do. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but the sin that dwells within me. So I find it to be a law that, when I want to do what is good, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my inmost self, but I see in my members another law at war within the law of my mind, making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. Wretched person that I am, who will rescue me from this body of death? This week we're finishing a 3-week series on identity that we're calling Who Do You Say That I Am? And we started with God a couple of weeks ago. We talked about how God gave us language of beloved and very good. Those are some of the foundational things that define us as people of God. Last week we talked about community and how community can both affirm who we are and challenge who we are and hold us accountable to who we're supposed to be. And it's really beautiful when community is at a healthy and good place. But we also talked about the fact that community sometimes can project on us an identity that we would rather not hold for ourselves. And we end our conversation this week with who do we say that we are? And the fact that who do you say that you are? How do you talk to yourself in the form of identity? And we see that self-talk with a great amount of tension in the readings that we saw from Paul. We don't normally do 2 readings in this conversation, but I think it's really important here to note that Paul is giving us a wide breadth of language when it comes to how he understands himself and how he understands his own identity. They sound like utterly different experiences. One so confident in who he is, so affirmed with his credentials, with his he's exactly where he needs to be. He's feeling the most himself. And then our Romans reading just throws him in the pit of despair. He's thinking, gosh, I can't even find my way out of this. Which way is up? What is light? What is dark? It's 2 vastly different human experiences, but it's so real, friends. If you're anything like me, I relate so closely to Paul's writings in both capacities. There are times and days that I feel so affirmed, so confident in my heart, in my mind, in my body, in my spirit. And some days that I struggle to get out of bed and I don't know which way is forward. And so that's the tension that we hold with self-identity. You know, we know ourselves more than anybody. We can't be our full selves, friends, without the voice and the lives of others pouring into us, affirming us, holding us accountable. And we talked about that last week. We can't be the fullest version of ourselves without other people. But we also can't be the fullest version of ourselves without understanding at a core and a cellular level and on a personal level of who we are. And there's a double-edged sword there, right? Because you know yourself more than anybody else on the planet. You know your gifts, you know your strengths, you know your hopes and your dreams, you know what you're good at, what you want in life. You know all of that more than anybody else ever can and will. And you know yourself better than anybody else. You know, even when others don't know, those places that you've missed the mark. Those places that you failed to do the good that you wanted to do. Those places that you probably should have apologized and you didn't. Those places that you keep going back to over and over and over again, even when you wish you didn't. You know that even when others don't. And if you're anything like me, it's usually that second voice, that negative voice, that critical voice that starts to win out over time. I was given a really powerful image recently. Imagine a TV screen. full of color. Let's say it's blue, but there's 1 or 2 pixels that are out, and those pixels are dark. If you ask anybody in the world what they see, they probably are not going to say a blue screen. They're going to say, I see 2 black dots. How often we can do that with ourselves. Even though there's so much good about us, so much joy in us at times, we focus on those 2 dark spots. We focus on those 2 things that aren't quite like the other things, and that's where we place the majority of the weight of our own self-understanding of our identity. So how do we balance that out? How do we hold that in tension? Well, some say they just don't give a voice to those voices in their life, or don't give weight to the voices in their life that are critical. We have to figure out whose voice has authority in our life. But what do we do when it's our own voice that's critical in our space? How do we balance out the idea of what we see and know to be true about ourselves with what we hold in tension with what our community says and with what God says? Well, 2 thoughts on that. 1, I think our foundation starts with beloved. We have to go back to what God says and how God speaks first. We also do go back and see this tension of community and how they speak into us. And the second thing is I don't think that self-inventory, I don't think that self-identity work is intended to be only positive. As we say, I am the greatest person that's ever lived, kind of like Paul sounds in Philippians. I think we need that balance. Because when we notice where we're weak, when we notice where we need to grow, that's the only way that we can grow. If we think that everything is perfect, if we think that we can't and don't need to talk about the things that are weighing on us, then we'll never move forward to the fullest versions of ourselves. I think a lot of this work that we've been doing in these past weeks is creating sort of a Venn diagram. Week 1, we talked about the circle of what does God say to be true about us. Week 2 was sort of what does our community say about us? And week 3 is how do we see ourselves? And I think our truest identity, our truest selves, is where those 3 circles overlap. What is that sweet spot of where God calls you beloved and your community affirms you and you know it to be true about yourself when you feel the most yourself on those days that everything seems to be going right? That's where we thrive. That's the core of who we are. And that's what we need to remember on days that negative talk wants to win out. Who do others say that I am, and how can that influence who do I say that I am? Finally, I think there's a truth about the idea that we can't live for other people. There's a phrase in the addiction community that you can't get clean until you want to get clean. Meaning, I can't get clean for somebody else. I can't prove to somebody else that they are worthy of love and respect. That's work that we have to do ourselves. And some of that acknowledges where we need to grow. But it also acknowledges where we've been created good and where our community and our loved ones see and affirm us in who we are. But most especially, friends, I want to challenge you to hold in tension, to find that sweet spot of the 3 circles that we've been talking about. Holding the idea that God has said something about us to be true, and our community is talking to us that affirms that, and we know how God has created us in beautiful and profound ways. I want to close with a poem of a dear and loved voice in my life, poet and pastor Jan Richardson. We've used her work often in this space. In fact, we've used this poem before from the pulpit, but I think the words are powerful and they're so appropriate for this time and place. This poem is called "Beloved is Where We Begin." If you would enter into the wilderness, do not begin without a blessing. Do not leave without hearing who you are. Beloved, named by the one who has traveled this path before you. Do not go without letting it echo in your ears, and if you find it hard to let it into your heart, do not despair. That is what the journey is for. I cannot promise that this blessing will free you from danger, from fear, from hunger or thirst, from the scorching of the sun or the fall of night. But I can tell you that on this path there will be help. I can tell you that on this way there will be rest. I can tell you that you will know the strange graces that come to our aid only on a road such as this, that fly to meet us bearing comfort and strength, that come alongside us for no other cause than to lean themselves towards our ear and with their curious insistence whisper our name, beloved, beloved, beloved.
Shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down sing